like to thank Nishith Bhai for graciously hosting this event for us, and of course being the chair for today's discussion, which is on setting up a private family trust. Uh, we have eminent panelists here, Rajesh and Gauri from Nishith Desai, and we hope to have fruitful interactive discussions today. Just to introduce a few uh, words for what we are. So Camden Family Connect is a joint venture between Camden Wealth of UK and the Putney Family Office in India. Camden Wealth internationally has been operating for the last 15 years as a prominent and eminent membership networking platform, bringing families, ultra HNIs, and family offices like yourselves together on a global platform, delivering best practices and lot of imparting lot of information on how to go about in terms of family offices and transition to the next gen. So Camden Wealth operates events globally in the US, Europe, Asia, and Singapore. Camden Family Connect was started here as a joint venture and got launched last year in January. And the idea was to offer this membership platform to the Indian families, family offices, and people like yourselves to become part of this membership platform. Since then, we have run successful conferences. We launched last year in April in Mumbai, where we had 60 families come and gather, and we had a panel discussion. And then we ran three major events. Last year in September, we had in Delhi. Then November, it was in Mumbai. And April this year was again in Mumbai. We have also run smaller roundtables in Pune and Delhi, and this is our third roundtable here in Mumbai. We had the very good speakers who have come and shared their experiences, like Urmi Piramal, the GMR family, the Reddy family, Mohandas Pai, Salil Singhal, to name a few, who have been part of various panels during these conferences. We also had the next gen next geners like Radha Kapoor, Devika Sraf, Aditya Sriram, Rishabh Mariwala, to name a few, who have come also and shared their experiences, and it has, good networking which has happened over the last few conferences. And Camden in India has aroused a lot of interest, where families like the Bajaj family, Adi Godrej, Mr. Russell Mehta, Harsh Goenka, Harsh Mariwala, who have been interested to become part of this family. The upcoming events after the Mumbai Roundtable, we have planned in Bangalore in July, and then we have a cryptocurrency webinar in August, 12th August, or around about that. And then in August, September, we plan roundtables in Chennai and Calcutta, and December will be the next main event. So with that short note, and just to introduce myself, I'm Amit Patni, part of the Patni family. Our family used to run Patni Computers, which was ultimately sold in 2011. And we have been one of the pioneers not only in IT, but we set up our family office in 2002. So we felt that we should be bringing the knowledge of family office, and this Camden network helps connect families together and build their own family offices. So with that, I would once again welcome Nishith Bhai and to take the chair and conduct the day's session today. Thank you.
So thank you, Amit. So nice of you, and let me call welcome to the members of Campden family. May I call them right? I think that will be easier nomenclature, that we are all part of the Campden family, and it's my real pleasure to have you all here this afternoon. Just a matter of context. Of course, I'm Nishith Desai. Needs no introduction.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. I would like to, for the benefit of Nishith Bhai, he's one of the first Camden India members. He took the family membership, and which was very, very gracious of him to sort of show us his confidence. What we are doing is the right thing for India.
No, I think the time has come when I think this particular piece has to be addressed. I think I'll talk a little bit about the firm and what we do, etc. Not as a matter of talking about ourselves, but just to give you context. But I have seen, I'm personally a researcher, lecturer, author, and international tax and corporate lawyer. No, it was way back in 1977. I specialized globalization and the international financial, international tax. At that point of time, there was not much taker for here. My specialization, and so what does a lawyer do? He doesn't have much practice. He goes and talks, like, which I do even today. I don't have much practice, but so I started lecturing around the world, started writing for international journals, and all the university papers and whatnot. So most of the practice grew from the US since 1981. But at that point of time, India was not open to the foreign investment. And willy-nilly what happened was that when I went to the US way back in 1981, I think the first connect was NRIs, right? And those days, a lot of techies whom you see, we didn't have much money. So we used to take one coffee and share, like Ahmedabadis do usually. So, not twice, 2 parts, but 3 parts, 1 cup of coffee. And, we used to be in dingy restaurant and all those kind of stuff. So what happened at that point of time, India had just opened up to NRIs. Because NRIs were considered to be part of larger Indian family, right? Therefore, while they could not open up the economy to the foreign investment otherwise, at least they could open a window, because India still needed foreign exchange and investment. So the first opening was for NRIs, considering that they will not do anything that is anti-national or something against the interest of the country. So that's how it started happening. So my first several years were mostly helping NRIs and do something with India. And of course, the corporate practice for non-India work as well, globalization and stuff like this, Bechtels and the DuPonts of the world and all this kind of thing. So there are 2 components. But many of these NRIs who we did not have, as I said, 1 cup of coffee to spend money on, many of them became billionaires, and now it's so nice to see that the whole community has grown very well. And as we go along, and most of my practice moved to Wall Street and stuff like that. But in 1991, when India opened up, and all of us know the history, that we in India had some skepticism. We were also a little scared as to multinationals will come, eat us away. And I think at that point, that particular decade was a decade of survival. Okay. And we all felt that, we'll be wiped off. But first 10 years, I'm sure all of you worked so hard to keep the whole business intact. And it's wonderful to see the little history of the whole thing, that we not only survived, but when it came to 2001, the first decade of this century, we not only survived, we prospered. And we then began to acquire companies abroad. We began to feel confident about ourselves because we are coming out of 50 years of protected economy. So we did not know. It was very uncertain as to what will happen, how the whole thing will unfold itself. And in the process, so first 10 years went in survival. Next 10 years went in becoming little even more prosperous. And now what I see in this particular decade is not only we survived, we prospered, but now we are looking towards philanthropy. We are looking at organizing ourselves, because we are organizing our businesses. First 10, 15, 20 years, we're all to, make sure our business is aligned, everything is restructured, and, all that. So what I see now, we are at a par with any other Indian global, house, or at least in terms of mindset. The values, somebody might have $100 billion, we might have 10 billion, $20 billion, whatever it is. But mindset is opened up, and I see huge amount of confidence. What we say, if Bill Gates can do it, I can do it. Okay, it's same way. So we also see there is a lot of interest in philanthropy and other things, because you have reached a stage and age where you have to think about organizing your families, because in prior 20 years we are all organizing our businesses. Now time has come that we have to organize our families and otherwise, so that business can go on, and including the issues of succession planning, including in terms of taking the legacy forward and stuff like that. In fact, there are a lot of interesting lessons to be learned even on the legacy. How do you manage the legacy? That itself is a big question on which we can talk separately, but that is another piece that is now being talked about, and so it's been wonderful seeing last 20-30 years, and as a professional, it's been a great delight for me to see that India has come a long way now, and that's why I want to really welcome you and also compliment all the industry houses and people and viewers on everything, right? And it's a great time. So just to step back, I think now that we are looking at organizing families, we are organizing the philanthropy and stuff like that, and the legacy. So it's very important that we understand some aspects of this this new syndrome. In the whole game, there are a number of ways to structure, design. You have to redesign your philosophy, to your strategies, to your structures and stuff like that. But as far as families are concerned, it is much of it is less formal. Much of it is not written down, and it's very hard to write down also at times, and therefore a lot goes by trust and by culture. Okay, and when I say culture to me means what you call unwritten set of common behaviors, which are not so much documented, but they are understood, I think. And so I think trust and culture are going to be the real drivers, and the value system is going to be real succession planning. I've seen a lot around the world and also in India that whatever you document ultimately is the spirit that counts. It's important to document, but there is a limit to that. It's just to clarify and stuff like that. Now, in the whole game, trust plays a lot of role. So, while one is the what you call oral trust or unwritten trust, you put faith and confidence in somebody. That's all about trust. Trust is nothing else. It's defined to mean as an obligation attached to a property, okay, to use the property for the benefit of somebody else. So I will be making some formal presentation. It will be a little bit of techie kind of thing. You might get bored a little bit. If you want to sleep, feel free at that point of time. Don't worry about it. But I'll go into those technicalities because you may have to deal with, and many of you are experienced people, so I'm not teaching, I'm just sharing experience. So in the process, the instrument of trust also has become a very important part. Now, number two, that in last 10, 15, 20 years, every Indian family has some member of the family living abroad. At one point of time, most of the people went to England or the UK and then, settled down. But in last 20, 30 years, it's mostly the US. And US has complicated a lot of, life in that sense. And, again, I'll be happy to talk a little bit more on that. But now when people are cross-border, how do you go about it? Next 5-10 years, we'll see emergence of, assets located around the world. Most of you would have some, but the proportion is going to increase because putting all eggs in one basket also people think is the right thing. Also opportunities in other parts of the world we are beginning to figure out, and exchange controls are getting relaxed, okay, and therefore there will be a lot more opportunities to tap on a global basis. And I'm very confident that from where we were in 1991 to where we'll be in 2021 will be very different world altogether, you know. So when assets are located around the world, how do you organize that? Okay. And as I was talking about the trust, one of the reasons I like trust generally is trust is nothing else but a contract, let's say, between a settler, in simple words I'm talking, settler and a trustee, and in which you put property and for the benefit of the beneficiaries. So it is a contract. And how it is regulated or governed, it is by contract. And that's one reason why I like trust. I've done hundreds of trusts around the world. But one of the reasons we like is because you can write your law into the trust. If I form a company, I have to comply with Companies Act. If I form partnership, I have to comply with the Partnership Act. If I LLP, you know, society or whatever you call it. So somebody else has written law for me and I have to comply. In trust, the beauty is that you can have a lot of flexibility. You can write your own thing. You can also put in principles of governance because you want to have governance, not because law imposes on you. You know, so that is one important reason that, you know, we prefer, to have trust. Also, it gives tremendous amount of flexibility. There are a wide number of trusts today. Of course, we'll talk a little bit about the Indian trust stuff, but I will also deal with cross-border trust. If you have any question, we'll look into that. We'll be happy to. I'm the head count here in this firm. Rajesh is a brain count, and she's Gauri. So Rajesh does a lot of international tax, and he's qualified both in the US here, etc. And Gauri does all the legal and IP, and now digital inheritance is becoming a huge issue. Maybe she will say a little about it. All of you do not know that possibly your digital asset may exceed the value of your physical asset. Okay, your image rights, for example, after 100 years, who knows? Okay, or because everything is going digital, and that is one of the things. So she'll be happy to talk to you about how sometimes people do not realize that you are creating digital asset. You're sitting what you call Rembrandtian attic. Okay, you got a Rembrandt artwork. It is sitting in some Malaya, whatever you call it, and then you have children are pauper, and they've got a base for the painting sitting somewhere, and they don't realize what value they have. So same thing for digital asset, that you're creating your Facebook accounts. That itself is a digital asset. And maybe you will be able to perhaps hopefully talk a little about that. How do you do that? How do you deal with that? So some of those things, these are intangible assets, and often not realize the value of it. So that's the other thing. I've got other two colleagues also here, Radhika and Chandni, and my daughter Nupuri is also here. So we are all here to answer any question. If you have a difficult question, they will answer. It's simple. I'll be taking up. So anyway. So coming back to trust, let me just give a little idea about this Indian trust, and it will be tone setting a little bit. Please don't get inundated with some jargons and legal stuff here. So can we have a presentation here? What is it?
No, you want to do rounded discuss?
Oh yeah, I think that was very sorry.
Yeah.
Actually, before introducing ourselves, we should have got your introduction. So, Amit, thank you for reminding. So, can we have some introduction beginning with you? And
yeah, maybe you can.
Usually, we start from this to this, but we'll start from the contrarian, of course.
So, myself, Vipul Mehta, representing Sanjay Mehta's family and business office. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dhruv Patel. I come from the Apollo family. We make road construction equipment like asphalt, plant, paver, road rollers.
Thank you.
I'm Ashok Shah, V-Trans family in Mumbai.
Hi, Sanjay Mehta. I'm a tech entrepreneur. Now do investments in startups and cryptocurrency.
Surendra Hiranandani. I'm a family of wife and 4 kids.
Mhm.
GS Lodra. I'm associated with Mr. Hiran.
Thank you. Yeah, Nupur. Or you, Nupur, you can introduce yourself just quickly. So.
I'm Nishith Desai from Nishith Desai Associates. Radhika Parekh, also from Nishith Desai Associates.
Rajkumar Dalani. I'm in stocks and real estate.
Thank you.
Amir Bihari from Damodar. We are in textiles. Brigade Bajaj Group.
Thank you.
Pratik Kothari, Srinagar.
Yes.
Now I'm visiting from Singapore. I work quite closely with the NDA on the Singapore leg of non-legal matters.
Not illegal. I have to clarify that.
Myself is Yash Rahul. I'm from Jesco Products here into energy products.
Sanjay Khemka from Pensol Industries.
Vinod Khemka again from the same company. We are into lubricants.
Oh, okay.
Hello everyone. I'm Pulkit Khemka from Pencil Industries.
Yeah.
I think couple of people.
Yeah.
I am Ranjit Malkani, ex from SOTC and CUNY, and now in finance and film.
Yeah. In fact, my first foreign trip was on SOTC.
SOTC, everybody all of us.
Nice to see. Yeah, thank you.
Swati Lali, I'm representing Malkani family.
Behind
Janani from Nishith Desai.
Yeah, Nilesh Gandhi from Express Hospitality and Logistics.
Excellent.
I'm Vanita Surana. I'm an executive director with Surana Group, and my family is into real estate and solar energy.
Great. Thank you.
I'm Ayushi Patti from Campden.
Great.
Yes, I'm Neha Kera. I look after the CFC team. Along with Ayushi, we have a team which looks after this in Mumbai, and I represent Campden.
You send the emails.
I'm the one who bugs you with all my emails, but
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah. So should we just take a little look at the slide that? Thank you. And so basically, as you all know, that I don't think you need this slide, but as you can see, that alternate high net worth people have been increasing day after day after day in India, I think, and there's so much happening in this particular space. And as I see that, apart from your businesses and traditional businesses, we see a lot of interest in investment in diverse asset classes today, including VC investment in private equity, VCs, and most importantly, latest trend we have seen is impact investing. Some of you might think that impact investing is like social and is non-muted returns. That's what is SEBI's expression for social funds and stuff like that. What has happened is that impact investing has given possibly highest dollar returns of 11 to 13% dollar returns. We had McKinsey making us a presentation. We had funded at a meeting, and what came out was that impact investing is no longer a separate asset class. It cuts across all the classes now, because if it is not impact creating, then the investors are not willing to invest. Most ESG, environmental, social, other kind of factors you look at, they are looking across the board. So at one point of time, only how much ROI and what will be the return of things, but now they look at all the LPs, specific institutional LPs are looking at impact investing. And today's morning, your newspaper, some of you read Low Capital, which we are lawyers too, has written almost $65 million. Some of you might have seen in Mint as well. So impact investing has emerged as an important part of, so when you look at philanthropy, traditionally, philanthropy is one thing, charity is different thing, right? Charity is slightly different from philanthropy. Philanthropy is like being rich and being wealthy. There is some difference between the two, right? But now, philanthropy in some ways also would include what you call social business projects and the impact investing. This is one trend that we have seen lately. And number two, that there are a lot of people even from overseas who are interested in India, but they would like to see Indian investment side by side. Even when you set up a fund, they would always want to see that, okay, if there's local people involved, the skin in the game is there. So you are able to leverage that. And it is very important that, to know that almost 70-80% of FDI or say fund investment comes from overseas, 20-30 from India. But India is a very important part of the game because they want to see local skin in the game. So you can leverage on your investment with the foreign capital as well. That is one important thing that we have seen. And other thing that we are seeing is that even Indians are now wanting to do a lot of things overseas. So you got of course, the LRS scheme is very, very tiny. Hopefully it will open up. Korea had similar situation. They opened up very, very small amount of remittance, and over a period of time they opened up significant investment outbound and stuff like that. So we'll also see going forward more exchange control restrictions being relaxed, and so that is something that we need to just bear in mind. Because now the word estate planning was not so much talked in the context of estate planning per se, particularly estate tax planning was being done. And I remember in 1984-85, VP Singh was the finance minister, and some of us were members of his committee. And what came out was the cost of collection was higher than, the actual tax collected. So a decision was made to scrap it. But the next thing, and then subsequent year, I say that globally, estate tax and gift tax are also linked, because you can make gift in
1 hour before you die.
Correct. So therefore, gift tax also was a nightmare, and all kind of things. So gift tax also removed, fortunately. Now, of course, gift tax has come in the form of income tax, because when you make gift to an unrelated party, it becomes, but still it leaves a lot of opportunity. In fact, many parts of the world, if you make gift to a third party, it's a little problem. It's not a problem. But when a related party gets, then they say you are transferring estate to the related party. In India, fortunately, law is otherwise. So you have an ability to transfer wealth to your close relatives at least, and do something about it, right? Now, what has happened is that growing in India as well as growing overseas. In India, one cannot rule out possibility of estate tax coming back, because this has been recorded. Don't talk too loudly about this subject. Today there is stronger economic case to have estate tax in India than in 84, because something happens to some billionaire, one estate will get Indian government more revenue than what it used to get the whole of the year though there, right? So, in fact, I had discussions with some ministers and others. Personally, we want estate tax to come back, but we don't think it's the right time to bring it. Also, it requires some state concurrence and other things. So, I think it will take at least 5 to 6 years. Don't hold me to that. Lawyers never give guarantees. And no personal guarantee. But I expect that something might happen. If nothing happens, it's good and well, because government collecting taxes is something not, what they do with the money we don't know. We have no control over the money. They collect taxes for one purpose, they can use for any other purpose, with respect. Okay. So, but at the same time, when we do estate planning and other kind of stuff for estate tax purposes or estate tax, it also has direct impact on the business needs. Because the first thing you have to make sure that the business remains stable and, I would say that it moves smoothly. It should not disrupt. At least the business should not. Other things can go on, internally. Another thing, allow for smooth transition of leadership. Okay. So I think leadership, all of you have talked a lot about this subject. But to me, leadership is about, there are many definitions of that, but to me, leadership means competency and inspiration. You know, you should be competent, you should be able to inspire, and that's to me. So I think those are the features that perhaps you might want to look into even within the family members who take the lead. These are the things on which we train our next generation. And third thing is sustain and improve growth for business after second and further generations to step in. You know. So again, this is some of the things that you all know about. Retain control over the use of wealth for the benefit of the family or accumulation of wealth. Again, this is what, that's why we are saying that you need to balance the needs of the business with the family. The way in which I look at, there has been a lot of talk in the past on haves and have-nots, disparity of wealth, right? We talked a lot about it, and even today people are talking about disparity, this much wealth here. To me, it is no longer, the world is no longer about ownership, it's about access. And you know, just as it all started with when yellow and black telephone started, that access to telecom was more important than owning a phone. Same way, somebody like may have $100 billion assets or $50 billion assets. It's not about who owns and how it owns, but what do you do with that? There may be somebody with $1 million, $1 billion, but he does not use it wisely, okay, then it's a different issue. So focus has to be how the wealth is used than just on ownership. I think those theories which are coming up again, at this point in time, issue is being raised, and of course the minimum income standards and all that is one thing. But yeah, you know, what we need to communicate to people is that how do we use the wealth? What do you do with that? You know, and so both having a wealth and communicating the usage of the wealth, creating a legacy out of it, and create a sustainable future. You know, that's something that is very important. And of course, the most important thing you want to see is you don't want lawyers to play, I would say, a role to extract fees from you, and you know, so to prevent the long and expensive disputes. I think this is something everybody hates, and we also don't like. Actually, we enjoy when our clients prosper and happily prosper. You know, that's what when people are in trouble and you have to make money out of it, it doesn't really gel well for anybody for that reason. You know, so that's the and now what is a trust? As I mentioned in the beginning, you know, of course in India, trust is governed by Indian Trust Act 1882, and trust is an obligation annexed to the ownership of property and arising out of confidence reposed in and accepted by the owner, or declared and accepted by him for the benefit of the other or another and the owner. Okay, this little legal jargon. All that it says that trust is an obligation attached to property, and the person who puts property in the trust is a settler. Sometime in the US you call the grantor. Okay, then there is a trustee. Okay, some places they call it truster. Okay, and then there are beneficiaries. In any trust, there are three players. You have a settler, you have a trustee, you have a beneficiary. Any two positions can be held by one person. Let me explain to you how. So when you think of structure, you can always, because many times you come up with ideas. Can I do this? Can I do this? That's the reason why we are talking about this, because of the time clients come up with great ideas. Okay, we validate that. So that's why you need to understand the basic. So any two positions can be held by one person. I can say I want to put in trust 1 crore rupees, okay, for the benefit of say 2 of my children. I can set up a trust. I can say from now on I will hold this money as a trustee. So I'm a settler and I'm a trustee, and I use the money for the benefit of. So from that time onwards, the property belongs to the trustee. I cease to be the owner in my own capacity. Now on, I own it in the capacity of a trustee, and trustee's job is to use the assets for the benefit of the beneficiaries. So as I say, two positions can be held by one person. You can also have a trustee and beneficiary, also the same people. For example, I have two kids, for example, and I say, kid one, take this crore rupees and use for the benefit of you and your brother or sister, whatever, right? Now what happens? He can take half, other brother or sister will take half. So he or she is also a trustee and also a beneficiary. You get it? So one could have two capacities. Similarly, one could be a settler and a beneficiary. Settler and a beneficiary. So I can say, take this property, keep it with you and give it back to me. So during that period, you are the trustee, but I am the settler and I am the beneficiary. I tell you a very interesting case. This was way back in early 80s. You see, there was, it's a real life story, so I can just tell a little story. And, whenever you want me to stop, I'll stop also. Don't worry about it. I can go on forever. And free legal advice, don't worry. So what had happened, there was a young boy in a very, very wealthy family those days. And the boy fell in love with the lady who was teaching her sitar. Okay. And she was Muslim, she was divorced. And this boy was from conservative Indian Guju family. Okay. And there were a lot of rakas. She was older, she was about 20 or something like that, and she was almost like 35, 40, whatever it is, right? Because age has nothing to do with love. So the whole thing is that there was a lot of acrimonious thing going on in the family, and families, you go out, this, that, etc. And he said, give up everything, and if you want to go, leave the house. Okay. And he said, yeah, this has happened in England before, right? So I don't mind leaving. I'll go and stay in a room, kitchen, apartment, but I don't want anything from you. What happened those days? This is about early 80s. And so he said, I'm willing to give you everything in writing. They came to me and said he's willing to give up everything, and he wants to leave, so he's going to make a document. And I said, but now look at what is total wealth. It was about 20-30 crores of rupees gift tax. Gift tax. Of course, at that time, gift tax was about 75% tax rate. So if you give up everything, there is a gift tax. Now neither he gets it nor the family gets it. If they would not have looked at it, it would have been a big problem, right? So now this was an issue. So after thinking, I said, what is the purpose? He says, no, if he gets married, then she will take away all the property and something happens tomorrow, this, that, it's all usual, And so then I thought, how can we resolve this problem? Our job is to find a solution. So I said, why not create a trust for himself, but make her mother a trustee? So we created a trust whereby he settled all his, because he was part owner in So we created a trust in which he settled the trust, okay, for his own benefit, but making mother a trustee. And we said, okay, after 17 or 20 years, if everything goes right and things are settled, you can revoke trust in between any time. But till such time he is matured and he cannot handle the property and something goes wrong. So because this was settlement of a property by a person on himself, there was no gift tax. Okay. So we could avoid gift tax, and you could avoid the control of the property, because all that was happening was transferring the control to the mother. Okay. So you can be very creative in thinking of, depending different situation. You can create a vehicle that would be, that would at least serve your purpose, depending on.
Good example.
Yeah, I thought it may be afternoon, no, so most people feel sleepy, and I feel the most, I like siesta time like nobody. But lawyers don't get.
Still together? Or?
Huh?
That is also
Sleep, shower, and food never compromise.
No, I think his question is.
question.
That story, they're together.
Are we?
And boy and girl together.
Are the couple still together?
I think what unfortunately happened, the lady died. You know,
Matter.
So sometimes how things after about 10-12 years of married life, she passed away, and but now look at the whole thing got sorted out. So those are kind of situations. But there are a lot of examples like that. I can go on and on and on. But and more so in the globalized world now, this becomes very critical, and so basically, as I said, there are 3 elements, and any 2 can be the same.
So you register a trust, or how does it?
It is there are 3 types of things. There are, if it is a trust under a will and all that thing, you don't need to, but otherwise you have to register a trust. But depending on the state, also stamp duty depends. So many times you set up trust with a small amount. Okay, in England you say about £1 trust you carried, and then rest of the property is movable. So movable property gets transferred by handing it over. Okay, that's how it happens. If I want to make a gift of this paper to you, I say, here it is, take it. So no, I don't need any document, nothing. And so once it is trust is settled, usually it is settled with £1 or sometimes 1,000 rupees or 10,000 rupees, depending on this thing. But in I think Maharashtra, what 3% stamp duty is there,
expensive,
and stuff like that. And so
Immovable
immovable
property
property is a issue, because that you cannot, immovable property under the law cannot be transferred except by a written document. So you have to convey through a written document, and therefore the stamp duty issues are important part of the game. But rest of the movable asset you can pass on simply by having say 1,000 rupees settled, and then you can transfer that, and that's the way most people would avoid stamp duty. Stamp duty is nothing else but a duty on a document. That is a revenue measure for the government, and that's how it is being done. So it's not. But many states or many countries do not have stamp duty. In the US, if you talk stamp duty, half the time they ask me what is stamp duty, they just can't come to grips. Okay, but in England it's very common. So another interesting. Sure.
Is just you're talking about estate duty. To avoid estate duty, you put in a trust. But if the trustee, so if I set up.
No, I'm talking stamp duty. There is
no
estate duty is separate from stamp duty.
No, but my question is, when you have a trust and you are the trustee and there's no professional trustee, then you can't avoid state duty. That's what I think we had studied.
You mean to say estate duty or stamp?
Estate duty.
Estate. See, estate duty, or often what is called inheritance tax elsewhere, is a tax imposed when property moves from one generation to the other. So it is only after the death that comes into. So that is different from what you call stamp duty.
No, that I understand. But the reason we form a trust and before we die is to avoid the estate
Then I'll
duty.
tell you how to go about it. If simply setting up a trust, okay, does not necessarily avoid type. What type of trust you have, that is what we'd avoid. So I will deal with that, some different types of trust and stuff. So you can have certain types of trust, and you can possibly manage that. But per se, putting in a trust doesn't really help. It may not. Okay. So in many countries, you've got this inheritance tax, and somewhere it is called estate tax or estate duty. We used to estate duty. I think the rate of tax is close to 80% at that point of time. And I tell you, very interesting, because afternoon, I hope all of you have enough time, right, to hear me today. Just to share you how some mistakes can cost you, okay, or to your heir. They are real life cases. when estate duty was in existence, I had one case, which was a partnership. Most of the business is a partnership thing. So what happened? Partnership, one partner died, and his wife entered as a partner in his place. Under the partnership deed, all the right title goodwill belonged to the husband who passed away. Okay, they went to some chartered accountant or somebody and they took the same partnership deed and replaced the names. Only thing that happened, that there was partner A and partner B. So partner B's name was inserted in A's name, and A's name got into the wife became B, right? Now what was the consequence? So when we went for estate duty, thing, the estate duty officer said, look here, partner A owned goodwill, okay, and other businesses, and now the wife has supposed to be stepped into that, but she inherited that. Now she has transferred the goodwill to partner B. Real life case, I tell you. And what happened was that he said, therefore, first wife has to pay estate tax because she inherited. So you have to pay 80% or whatever that tax was there, right? One thing. Then she transferred it without any consideration, so it's a gift tax. The real story. It was quite a task, And because he says, now there are two things. One, she inherited, so husband's goodwill, because goodwill is the most important asset they consider in partnership for the estate duty purposes. Some of you must be aware of that time, So goodwill was, got all transferred to B. He got all the things, but all tax liability was on her because she says, they say that, okay, look here, estate duty you pay, and now you also transfer. The transferor has to pay gift tax. So there are two transactions, Oh, we had a lot of difficulty. Of course, we correct. Fortunately, partner was good. So he said, okay, it was a mistake, and otherwise he will say it is already, now fight out whatever it is, right? So all those things are very important, that when some of the documents are treated as fill in the gap, and but these are kind of interesting things that you come across in life. So that's other thing. Third, one small principle I just want to differentiate, because our law came from English law, right? From about 2016 time when the Crusaders, were there in England, and they were, the Protestants and the Christians and other ones there. So Crusaders, when they were going to fight battles and wars, what was happening, their properties were remaining unattended. So the concept of trust came. They said, I'm going to fight the battle, keep this property, when I come back, give it back to me, or give it to my family and stuff like that. It was all oral, so please do this, please. Everything became little this thing. But the concept of trust came about 1,000 years ago. Then it continued to get refined. And so in England, what has happened even today in many ways, there is something called duality of ownership. So, you have the beneficial ownership, and you got, the legal ownership. Okay. So, in India, we do not have concept of duality of ownership. So that means that the trustees are the legal and beneficial owner. So when you set up a trust, they are both legal and beneficial owner. Beneficiary is the only beneficial interest in the fund, in the trust. It's a little technical, but I'm just giving you, there's some legal consequences to understand that beneficial owner. Owner means who has right to possess and dispose of and use it and all the thing. So in India, there is only one. Trustees are both legal and beneficial owner.
So you're automatically a beneficiary if you're a trustee.
Yeah, beneficiary has beneficiary, so you can only claim. So nobody can say that, okay, without my permission, trustee, you cannot transfer. You follow? Trustees are full ownership in that sense. That's little difference. It's technical. I'm not going to go deep into that. But this has some consequences
Sorry, but he's not a. When you say beneficial owner, means unless he's a beneficiary, he's not beneficial.
Okay, so it's considered to be one single unified ownership. That is a technical legal position. Beneficiaries are only having beneficial interest. They can only claim that,
Right
okay,
to
please
receive.
give me this, please.
Right to receive only.
Right to receive only.
But
Whereas,
for example, I have a trust for my daughter. I am the trustee. She is the sole beneficiary. So then
her nature of interest is beneficial interest. If you are a beneficial owner, that means without my permission you cannot transfer. So when trustees want to transfer any property, they would also need the beneficial owner's consent.
Okay. Yeah.
Not so in India.
Not so in India.
In India, it's not like that. In India, it's I don't need consent from the beneficiary.
Correct, exactly. So these are small.
Trustee is the whole and soul.
Things, of course.
But trustee is not the beneficial owner.
He's the
beneficial owner.
Or all the beneficial owners.
All the ownership
lies with the trustee.
Lies with the trustee.
All incidences of ownership always belongs to the trustee, because ultimately ownership is sort of the bundle of rights. All the rights related to ownership only lie with the trustee. The beneficiary only has a right to claim or right to a distribution as per the provisions of the trustee.
So consent is not.
Yeah.
Okay. Of course, there are obligation, fiduciary, and all that.
Trustee can be a beneficiary of. So you can have 2 out of the 3.
Exactly.
But in UK, you would have to take signature of all the beneficiaries.
There are all the issues to that.
There are multiple.
And again, there are a lot of intricate provisions, but I'm just doing the fundamental. There's a little difference between the two, So, of course, for tax purposes, it's a pass-through kind of thing, which almost everybody must have gone through, specific trust and discretion. I think none of the people sitting here would not have heard this.
If there is a property or an asset outside of India, then you need to set up in that geography, or you.
Well, it may be depending on governing law, but most of the time, of course, most countries would have provision that if it's a immovable property, the law that governs is local law.
Movable is.
And the movable is generally by what you call law of domicile. Just to give one, now that little bit informal setting, and feel free just like this. Even in inheritance, this is very relevant. So, not tax, I'm talking about inheritance. For example, say there is a French person who has got movable property in India. Okay, bank account or something else, right? And immovable property also. Something happens to him in France, or he's a domicile of France. Okay, how will the property be devolved? Indian law or French law? So, immovable property will devolve according to Indian law, but movable property will pass according to the French law of the domicile. So, his heirs, etc. So, you get my point. So, the distribution of asset intestate, of course, is it will go by the law of the domicile, whereas immovable property by the law of the country.
So we recently had a very interesting case where there was a dispute pending about inheritance in the London court, and the dispute was that whether the shares of a cooperative society, whether they are movable property or immovable property, and because the law of and the particular person who had passed away, of course, was no longer domicile of India. So if it was held that it is a movable property, then the devolution will happen as per his current domicile, whatever. If it is immovable property, it has to go by the Indian law. And on that point itself, our firm had given opinion to be provided, and we came to the conclusion it is even the shares of cooperative society are still immovable property. So the character of the property itself sometimes could be a question mark whether movable or immovable, and accordingly the law changes, the applicable law changes.
So there are, let's say, unlisted equity which is bought across in multiple geographies.
It's movable property. Shares are movable property.
Another interesting thing, let me extend this little lighter, real story, but I talked about shares. Okay, it's a movable property. That's fine. But whether it is tangible or intangible, how many of you think shares are tangible? Right? Okay, now look at it. Basically, it is intangible. It's only interest in the it's only certificate is tangible, but share in a company is intangible. And how it impacts tax? Let me give you an example now that we are on a little side track here. So, in 1991, when India opened up to the foreign investment, we had this big issue. Majority of the investment was coming from the US. Okay. Now, we are doing comparative law studies, and there is something called Code Section 865, Internal Revenue Code in the US, and that says that when a US resident, a company or like even pension plans are considered resident or citizen or somebody, when he makes investment in India, okay, and sells the shares of an Indian company, we have first right to tax. US says, why? Because share is an intangible property like copyright. It resides with the person who owns it. So if a person is resident in India, he owns a copyright, it goes with him. Similarly, share is intangible property, and therefore we have a US resident and you have a US source income because you are selling US based property, where the India says no, under Indian law, okay, the situs of the shares is where the company is incorporated. You get me? So they say source of income is India, capital gains are in India, we have first right to tax. And US says no, we have first right to tax. You, if you want to give credit, you give, we don't give you. Okay, at that point of time, capital gains are taxed at 25% and short term was about 50%, and US 40% plus state level tax and city level tax, 3 level tax, about 50-60% tax. Here 25-30, whatever it is, surcharge, surtax, whatever it is. I'm so sorry. Yeah? So just sorry. Now what does this do? You have double taxation. You got a 25% here. In the US, you got 55-60%. Remaining lawyers take away. You know. So, so real. So this is a big issue. And what does so you say, there is double tax treaty. But what does it do? Double tax treaty only says that both countries can tax in accordance with their own laws. US-India treaty was negotiated for almost 25 years. And I remember dealing with US Treasury people, and only because of Rajiv Gandhi at that point of time, he said anyhow he was going, I want to get this treaty closed. So it was a little imperfect treaty, but they signed off because they wanted to have something, otherwise, for the relationship building or whatever it is. So that's how what was provided, simple treaty. There is no treaty. If you say both countries can tax in accordance with all law, what is this treaty about? Right? And that treaty still lives. Correct? So problem was double taxation of the same income, and then this was a big deterrent to foreign investment, 91. And from there, then we started doing comparative studies and we tumbled on this Mauritius. So I personally went to Mauritius, talked to government of Mauritius, helped them build an offshore center, and then, set up very first 5 companies there, all this history. But the whole thing comes out of this issue that whether share is a tangible or intangible property. So sometimes it is law is very interesting to look into, but we need to understand some basic concept which makes your life interesting. So as I said that trust can be used for a wide variety of purposes. First of all, protecting family interest, as you can all see, including future generations. Okay. Flexibility in distribution of assets within the family, succession of business leadership. Again, in fact, very interestingly, I should have shown you the chart on Wikipedia possibly. If you look at Ford Foundation and Morgan family, right, so Rockefeller and Morgan, entire businesses were controlled through a medium of trust. Okay. And it became so problematic and became entire, situation was like anti-public at that time because people began to abuse the monopoly at that time. And that is why they started bringing antitrust laws. Antitrust laws because this family trust, maneuvered in a way that they control whole economy, everything. And it went to a level that people started, resisting that. And then in fact, some presidents were elected based on the promise that we'll bring an antitrust law and make it stricter and stricter. So today, antitrust law looks like competition law. It's different. You don't even think of that. Why that word antitrust came? It was because the businesses were controlled through trust. And also it has definitional context that when you have wealth, you are a trustee of the wealth as well. As Mahatma Gandhi said one time, right? So, anyway, so for business purposes also trust are very, very important, and all of you know that even in corporate structuring and otherwise you use them apart from the other kind of vehicles. Then pool of funds for investment, which you all know whether they are private equity, VC, IIF, and ease of obtaining leverage within asset consolidation. Again, that is because if you are legal owner, you are able to consolidate, and many times this situation has come. Because trust is not a separate entity. It is an obligation attached to a property, as I mentioned in the beginning. And so many times for consolidation purposes is used. And, on the other side, you can ring fence your assets. Probate process is not required. US it's very common to have living trust. Some of you must have heard that expression, And primary reason is not to avoid estate tax, but also to make sure that the probate in India we do not have so much a problem. In Bombay, Calcutta, anything, Chennai, the probate system prevails. The rest of the country doesn't. But probate duties and probate process is also quite a problem.
What is a probate?
So especially in the context of
probate is a court document which verifies that the will really exists and is valid.
Yeah, probate is basically proving the valid will exists. Pardon?
Sorry?
Why do you say probate is a
get a
problem in
probate
other states
on your
cities
bill?
as compared to the
In Mumbai, it's not
Sorry.
required.
Your question?
Sorry, what is he asking?
You have a question?
My question is why do you say a probate or a will? Probate is an acceptable document in Mumbai.
The
Chennai,
probate is a kind of a proof that the valid will has been executed.
Easy to obtain
to get a court certificate.
To go to the court and get the certificate.
It's a process we are talking about.
The process is easy.
But you have to get a certification from the court.
Okay.
Court would when you apply for a probate, they will send notices to all the heirs and get objections.
It's done by High Court.
Huh?
Yeah.
High Court.
Everything in Maharashtra comes to Mumbai.
Yeah.
Or Nagpur. No?
So in Mumbai in particular, So I think Maharashtra would be the same thing. Only in this metropolitan.
No, it's only in the
Presidency
towns.
towns. We have identified
So it's
the
not
names.
all over.
So it's like we have inherited.
So,
from the
Chennai, Calcutta, Mumbai.
Mumbai.
So,
Only
No.
This
Good
is
or
the
bad,
unique-
I don't know. But
These are the towns that you need because these are essentially the old presidency towns which were notified. So where on certain matters you have a special process which is there, and probate is one of them where you still need to go and get the probate from the High Court in each of these jurisdictions.
So High Court certifies that we have looked at the will. We have found after serving notices to all the legal heirs that this will is valid, genuine, and enforceable. So you get a certificate. That certificate is called probate. Okay, but in India it's only 3 cities, so rest of the city is not covered by that. It's not mandatory. But especially in the US, probate is in number of states, and that causes and there are substantial probate duties, by the way. Okay, so you got to if you have an asset in the US. First thing is to check whether you want to do something about it, want to put it in trust, etc. You can do while you're living, and that there is no stamp duty on trust, for example. So you can have the trust and put in that, and you can have living trust, and thereafter stuff like that.
I think the other thing that we have tried to recently sort of look at trust is basically to hold intellectual property of a
Yeah.
group or a conglomerate, because what happens is that same trademark may be used by multiple parties and you want to sort of consolidate. Sometimes you do joint ventures with third parties and all of that, but use the same trademark. So how do you get the royalties? I think Tatas have done that. Right? And I
So
mean,
Tata's, the model that they have followed is that you can't, because you'll actually have quite a few companies in the group which can't use the name because they never could get the permission because of the size. Somebody like a Voltas and all could never get the permission because of sheer size. There are certain parameters which they have used internally as to when they will actually give it, and obviously you get a 1%
1%
royalty.
but what happens is you're able to sort of consolidate the value in one place, and whether it is acquisitions, mergers, and all of that. But if the IP is held, then the licensing and all that also could be managed appropriately. And the other thing, the benefit is that especially if there are, when there is a full family tree and the way each business is operated in an independent manner and all of that, then the value of that brand is being derived by everybody, right? So the benefit also should be to the entire family. If that is the philosophy of that family, then at least from all the businesses there is some value going at the trust level and then getting distributed to the entire family tree, right? So I think, I mean, we have, I mean, especially in the media and entertainment industry, for example, we are using that, because what happens is there is a brand and then there are multiple things that come out of that brand, and in that case now we are using to host that brand in a trust and then see how it can be licensed across, or the value can be continued to be derived at the family level and not necessarily at the company level. So one can think about trust even for those purposes.
Next thing is mitigating potential estate tax or estate duty, exposure. This is very important. Some of you asked me a question in the beginning. So, particularly for the estate tax purposes, what happens is that when the property passes, at that point of time, the estate duty or estate tax is imposed. So, what is being done is to put the assets in a trust while a person is alive. Okay. There is, and of course most of you know, there is some difference between what is called transfer of an asset and transmission of an asset. Transfer of asset means inter vivos, between two living persons. So when two living persons transfer property, it is called transfer, right? But transmission is by effect of law. So when somebody dies and his assets go to his heir, okay, it is transmission. But these two expressions just.
So how does the asset, which real estate properties which are owned by a company, so if you transfer company shares, automatically
it goes, yes.
So
exactly.
Does it have any impact?
No, then it is a transfer of shares which matters. So then it is the value of shares. For estate tax purposes, they will take value of the company as a whole. And they will look at what
will then estate come in estate duty, because
estate
you are just
duty
transferring the shares.
Estate duty is imposed on the value of the assets that are moving from one generation to other. Okay, so you value all the asset as on the date of the death, and then whatever is the value, you are taxed on that value, minus of course the liability if there is any, but the market value is taken.
Even for when it is transferred of shares.
Yes.
Transfer of shares, I said, is between two living persons.
No, even
this is more of a transmission.
Yeah,
so in a situation, in a classical situation, in a no trust and all, and you have a estate duty that's in place, you essentially look at what is the corpus or what is the value of the estate which is actually devolving upon the next set of legal heirs. So on that, obviously there is a tax. So even when you're transferring the shares also form part of the estate. Even if the underlying value of the shares comes in from the property, when you're valuing the shares, you are effectively going to give effect to the value of the underlying property or the immovable property under that.
When you transfer your property into a trust while alive, there is no
Especially
I'm
when
holding
you
it in the
transfer to your
company.
close relatives, there's no gift tax is there. A stamp duty on the settlement may apply, but you have a small settlement in most of the movable properties today.
So, no, if I'm transferring while alive from a company to into a trust.
Okay, if a company transfers, here is a company, you own the shares.
Ah.
Company owns the asset.
Yeah.
If company transfers assets to its shareholders, there are two implications.
Oh,
Either they would be deemed dividend under section 222,
First
or
is
that would be
then-
considered as a partial liquidation
Can't do direct to a
of the
trust.
company.
No.
Yeah. And again, that's it.
So sorry, let me answer that slightly differently, right? If let's say I have a closely held company, which is really the normal situations that happens, right? Family owns a business in the company, and what you essentially want to do is to have the company actually, let's say, a certain amount of the free reserves. You want to sort of say, let me settle that amount into the trust, because it's technically it's a closely held company. You're literally like, company's money is also my money, right? So in that situation, there are two different things, right? The first one is that, can a company settle shares into the settle assets or settle cash into the trust? There is no problem as long as the memorandum of the company sort of allows or gives the power for the company to do that. The company has every right to actually settle that. In fact, the challenge comes in, as Nishith was pointing out, from two perspectives. One being that if the beneficiaries of the trust are also going to be the same people as the shareholders in the company, can this effectively be treated as a deemed dividend? Because this is nothing otherwise that you would have just given a dividend distribution to the shareholders. The second aspect that comes in is because what is exempted under tax law today, and the law sort of changed from 1st of April, is that if you are settling a trust for the benefit of close relatives, the actual settlement of the trust is exempt from any income tax consequence. Earlier, the position that was there was sort of the view which everyone was taking was that because you have this whole section 56, which has always created a problem, at least for the last many years, where they have essentially said that if you're giving something without consideration or for lesser than fair market value, we are going to treat it as income in the hands of the recipient. So the same situation also now from 1st of April comes into play in case of settlement of shares or assets or anything else into the trust, where if you're doing it for the benefit of close relatives, it's exempt, which means if the beneficiaries are close relatives, it is not taxable. But if the beneficiaries are not close relatives, technically today the way the provision reads, even that can now be brought within the tax net as far as the settlement is concerned. Which is why in a situation that you have where the company is actually settling the shares or the cash or the assets into the trust, there is this risk always comes into play, whether this can be treated now as effectively income from other sources in the hands of the effectively the trustees or the beneficiaries. We'll get into trust taxation there, and be brought within the tax net. So I think that's always the issue. So is it possible? Yes, it is possible, but there is always going to be some degree of consequences that come in.
Yeah. So before I forget, would anybody like to have water? Because I know, I can feel some water.
It's always there. You can pick up. Don't worry.
No, you don't have to get up if you want.
Sit on.
You want some water? I know that sitting. You want some water? Instead of getting up, we better. We have to take care of you a little bit. Relax. Okay. So now coming to mitigating estate duty, I think this is just about the right time to think about estate duty. for a couple of reasons. As I mentioned that personally I don't see STQD coming for the next 5 years. Don't hold me to that. Okay. The reason I'm saying this is that when we had old estate duty, some of the kids even don't know what estate duty is. The rule was that if any asset was transferred 2 years prior to the date of death, was not covered. So that was the 2-year period was there, So
not exempt.
They got exempt because if
more than 2 years.
So if you within 2 years means that now somebody is going to pass away and you start transferring and so that was intended that way. So they said within 2 years if you give a gift, that gift was included in your estate.
Not exempt.
Not exempt. What happened in the US, it's about 5 years, many states. It's a state-wise. In the US, the system is federal estate duty is there, inheritance tax, and there is a state level. And some cities may have, like New York might have
5 years here also.
Yeah. So 5 years. England has gone to, I think, 7 or 8 years.
Wow.
So, so it is important to just think of that in some ways that now when India, assume for a moment, brings estate tax back, they might put 5 or 7 years.
Yes.
So one way of thinking is that whether is it worthwhile considering whether something should be transferred in the trust or otherwise. I think this is one. Or something, what to do about it, you want to gift away, do this, that, etc. Because by gifting away you lose control. So some parents are worried, Right. And so how do you do that, right? So now, one way is to transfer the asset in a way that possibly you can, if something comes in 5 years, don't know. If nothing happens in 7 years, probably the rule comes for more than 7 years is unlikely.
Don't die for me.
Yeah, and I think with this all the ventilators, and I was at Singularity University in Silicon Valley, about 60-80% of body parts are now available. So you can, like aeroplane never gets old, na? You always replace.
Breathing.
So you can keep breathing. Yes, exactly. So those at least, So the idea is that one needs to consider this, of course, and therefore. So now, if we have to transfer, how do you do that? One thing, of course, a straight gift, which anyway you should be making, but there is no confusion. Even if somebody ditches you, still okay, right? And often it happens, So fine, but that's gone out of. But you don't give everything as a gift, right? Because you want to make sure there is some control. Number two, so you can use trust as a vehicle. Now, there are a number of different types of trust. But let me give you a little overview of the whole thing. There are 2 types of trust. First, oral trust and a written trust. Okay, that's one part of the game. Number 2, there are trusts which are specific trust, and there are discretionary trust. I think most of you have heard about it. But what are the differences? Specific trust means when you settle a trust for the benefit of a beneficiary or beneficiaries whose shares are ascertainable or defined or specific, because the shares are, you say 50% you take, 50% you take, 1/3 you take, 1/3 you take. Okay. So the specific trusts are the ones that you can define to this particular, in a discretionary trust. There is a discretion, but discretion with whom? The trustees. So that's why it's called. So discretionary trust means that the trustees have a discretion to distribute the income and the capital of the trust in such proportion as they may deem appropriate. That's why it's called discretionary trust. Within a trust, you can also possibly plan. Then you've got 3 kids, right? And they've got some grandkids or otherwise. You can also have within a trust, you can have 2 or 3 trusts. So 1/3 goes to one, but that is still a discretionary trust. So within that group, the trustee can decide. So it is not that everything can be given to one or the other one. So there are various methods, but the importance of discretionary trust in the context of estate tax is as follows. That today you are transferring the asset, okay? If it is immovable property, stamp duty will be one of the important considerations. If it is not, for rest of things, then you have the trust, where trustees have discretion to distribute the assets in such proportion as they like. Then when anything happens to a beneficiary or somebody, then nobody can say that this specific part of the trust belongs to this particular beneficiary. Say if there are two parts, 50% one beneficiary, 50% to B, if something happens to A, then his portion will also be included in the estate of his. You follow. So first thing is you are transferring asset today. So if something happens after 5-7 years, to that extent. Second, something happens to that beneficiary, because if it's a specific trust and something happens to that beneficiary, then again you have his beneficial interest will be valued for estate tax purposes. But if you got it, na? So there is a estate tax at the original level, okay, at the settler level, and also at the beneficiary level. Sometimes you think I will pass it on to XYZ and therefore, but who knows, something goes wrong, God forbid,
In case of revocable rights, the tax to the settler.
Now I'm coming to that as well, but I'm just mentioning in the context, because estate duty is very much on the minds of a lot of people currently, so that becomes an important part. So you can structure to start with that some asset, of course, you will keep for yourself. So irrespective of estate duty comes, if you don't want to be in a situation, they do nothing, correct? Number two, you can divide some portion in the trust, something direct transfer, something in some other fashion, etc. You can distribute. But one important vehicle is this discretionary trust. So you put asset in a discretionary trust. You can even give a little more guidance also. You can also appoint an advisor whose advice will be available to the trustees, and trustees must seek their advice, but final decision with the trustee, which most of the time, the protector and the advisor kind of situations. I don't go into detail, but subject to all that, it is possible to plan in a way that estate tax can be mitigated. You got my point. And number two, so we talked about discretionary and specific trust. Okay, then there is something called revocable and irrevocable trust. Irrevocable trust, when you say irrevocability, it is at settler level. Irrevocable trust means settler settles the trust, he will have no power to revoke the trust.
Beneficiary can revoke.
No, beneficiary doesn't have any control of the trust. So trustees can dissolve the trust. You can give power.
Or they can alter the beneficiaries.
If the beneficiary is also trustee, see, beneficiary has only beneficiary interest. He in his capacity as trustee, as I said, one can be beneficiary and one can be...
No, but there are other beneficiaries too.
No, they cannot have right to dissolve.
No. In irrevocable trust, can you change the distribution?
In irrevocable, you can have irrevocable discretionary trust.
Okay, irrevocable discretionary.
That is how it is done.
But the money doesn't go back to the settler once it is settled.
No, then it doesn't go back to settler.
It has to go to the beneficiary.
Yeah.
Except as irrevocable, then only the estate duty gets saved. So if it is revocable, then
if it is revocable, then it is not.
Right.
Correct. Exactly. Even for income tax, revocable trust, if you have revocable means if the settler has a power to revoke or reassume the control of the trust, then the assets of the trust and the income of the trust is attributed to the settler for income tax purposes. And same thing they would possibly apply for estate tax also, who knows how it's going to come. So revocable trust are used for certain different purposes, okay? But irrevocable are very popular in the succession planning. And irrevocable discretionary trust is important. So you have to be irrevocable and it's discretion. But discretion, you can define the boundaries of the trustee that okay, you will not distribute more than 1/3 in favor of X or Y or Z. So you can structure it so that it doesn't happen that XYZ all beneficiaries and something goes everything to one X, Y, or Z. So you have a discretion, but in a limited way. So you can circumscribe the discretion in your trust, and that is another way to go about it.
If it's specific trust, and the example you gave, if one of the beneficiary is no more, does that interest always go back to the settler, or it could go back to the other
No, if it is a irrevocable specific trust, then the beneficiary, if something happens to him, it will go to his tribe. So his heirs would be replaced.
Okay.
Yes, not settler, because it is irrevocable, it cannot go back to settler.
Okay. See, usually you provide for that in the trustee.
Yeah.
To say that, okay, what happens in the event, let's say the immediate beneficiaries, if any one of them is no more, then do their heirs or the next set of beneficiaries also come in. So that's something, that's a sort of waterfall mechanism that you always try and provide for within the trustee itself.
So can a beneficiary revoke his right? So
Yeah.
you know you're going to die, and you say, I revoke my right, therefore estate duty is not chargeable.
See, beneficiary has a right to what you call, if not exactly revoke, right? But he can disown. For example, you give something to me, I say I don't want it. Okay, so that right is there.
So therefore you cannot be charged estate duty.
But what will happen is that it will go back to the trust or to the settler in that
But
sense.
then wait for the next beneficiary to die for estate duty purpose.
Because then somebody, exactly, that is how it is.
So there is a way for
But
you
if
to
he
pass
has,
it on.
but that should have been done by him in time.
Again,
Because then
7
we
years
will
before.
disown.
Again 7 years before.
You see, there are people who take up, say, Juros, become saintly thing and they said, I'm not doing anything, right? There are people who do it. But then they say, I'm not interested. To that extent, if something happens to him after having disowned, because even if you want to, I don't want to take it. So you can, then it should not apply.
Should not apply.
Yeah.
So what happens if trustee and or settler dies?
Nothing. Settler is already given up. Trustee doesn't own, he owns it legally.
So you have to substitute.
So, beg your pardon?
Who will do the substitution?
No, that is a mechanism you have to provide in the
You
trustee,
can-
that
so
if
there
something
are-
happens to trustee, so institutional trustee, which we'll discuss separately.
So there are two things, right? And the reason really you can get into institutional trustee. One, that your trustee itself can provide as to who will be the successor
Successor of the
trustee of the trust. There is also a provision, obviously, if there are no trustees and all, there is the ability for to go to the court for the court to appoint and all. The reason why you usually have institutional trustee or provide for it is obviously because no one wants to be going to the civil court.
Sarkari.
Yeah. So, yeah.
But where does the estate? So once you set up a trust and then you die, then there is no estate duty because
You, as a settler, die, then it's done. Unless the settlement falls within the period of that 2 year or 5 year or 7 year. Then that estate will be included. If it is gift, settlement is more like a gift. And therefore, if you settle trust today, something happens to you when new law comes in, assume. And it provides that if any gift or any thing was transferred done without consideration, within 2 years prior to the date of death, then settler estate will be taxed.
so if the settler dies after 7 years,
Yeah.
then there is no estate.
Then there is
duty.
no estate.
And is this trust normally the beneficiary is a time bound trust, or how does it dissolve?
You can have time-bound trust, and the way in which there are rules against perpetuity, which again is a little complicated rule. I can go into that in more detail. But normally you might want to have some time limit, but it can go long time because
Lifetime of the
children of
beneficiary.
children. The typical rule is that you should never have a situation where property it becomes forever non-transferable. That's the principle that some countries have removed the rule against perpetuity, but India it still exists. So it's about, I think, 18 years after the death of the last beneficiary. That's how it reads. But you can provide 50 years, 60 years, 30 years, whatever it is, and
what if the beneficiary is a company?
Company can become beneficiary.
So then there is no death of the beneficiary.
Then no. But company can die with voluntary winding up. But if it is creditor, and they will take you in winding up. Nowadays, more so banks will be. Again, they are all different. There are a lot of permutation, combination. So whole idea is you've got to strategize a little bit. Also ring fence your risk, because no one particular solution will be magic band. But still they are judgmental calls. You distribute in different ways, so that that would be one way to think about it.
Just a point on the institutional trustee.
Yeah.
Generally, institutional trustee charges fees on the overall AUM.
Yeah.
A licensed non-institutional trustee charges on fixed amount.
Correct.
So this is something which can make big dent in terms of the costing.
Right. Correct. Exactly.
So question on the estate duty implication. The question Mr. Patni asked. So when the settler has settled an irrevocable trust,
correct,
and that this time has passed, then that asset is not subject to estate duty for that settler.
Correct.
But if a beneficiary is alive, and he passes away, does that
his beneficial interest in the trust will be valued and will be subject to tax, estate tax. If suppose settler dies, trust is still going on 15-20 years. In the meanwhile, one of the beneficiary dies. If it is a specific trust, then his share will be valued and it will transfer. It will be taxed. But if it is a discretionary trust, then even if something happens to him, because he had no crystallized interest, nothing happens, it goes to other.
So no estate duty.
Then there is no estate duty. That's why importance of the irrevocable discretionary trust settlement, as you can see, and that they are very popular globally, actually. But as I mentioned, that period 5-7 years is important. These are types of trustees which individuals, institutional trustee, private trust. Many times what happens, people appoint their friends, which is very important, but they are of the same age. And today, one of the biggest problem is that somebody is more fit than trustees. So you got to be a little careful about whom you choose as a beneficiary. But it is difficult to find, and many times individuals do not know what are the trustee obligations, and sometimes they are abused. But it doesn't mean that it's up to you. So next thing is institutional trustee. Now, I remember seeing Central Bank of India trustee board, on that at Flora Fountain, with respect, and but that was the only trustee company which was being seen in maybe 100 years, right? But the board was already rusted and crooked, and you don't inspire trustee confidence, right? So I respect it. It's all right. But now more and more banks or the other institutional trustees are coming into. So you have to evaluate, how they are, what are the competencies, what are they doing, and what are the charges, and and often they charge based on AUM, but depends, and you can even negotiate flat fees, and there are a lot of flexibility. And ultimately, what you want is a right trustee, So you have to figure out how to do that, and at the same time, sometimes what happens, if you have banks, they are extremely risk averse. So our experience globally is that banks, when you appoint trustee, nowadays banks even do not like to act as trustee, but because they have a lot of internal processes and they won't take any risk. So if you want to invest in the shares of company, every time they will go back and forth, you can't invest and stuff like that. So they're private trust companies or the administrators, and they're slightly more flexible. Of course, they have to discharge their fiduciary responsibility. And institutions are a private trust company. I think Singapore has become prominent for private trust company lately, And some of you know that even recently Lee Kuan Yew had this big estate problem because the brothers fighting, and I think 7 wills were there, and last will was drafted by daughter-in-law, and therefore the issue of independent relationship and those kind of things also came up, and whatever it is. But that's a separate subject, But so one has to also carefully select, trustee and make this. These are the decisions which are not very easy to make, easy to talk about, but so. And then powers of trustees are to manage trust fund, including investment, divestment decision, make distribution to beneficiary, amend the trust deed if expressly provided for. So in the trust deed, you must, otherwise you have to go to court of law, and then it's a whole process. So you might want to provide, amend the amendment powers. But I think the way in which one should do that, they should be able to amend within a certain framework, not anything and everything, right? Also, they can be given powers, particularly in discretionary trust or even otherwise, power to add or remove beneficiaries. That also can be given. Again, it has to be expressly provided for. Modify the terms of the trust, make contribution to the charity. Okay. Now, one interesting thing you must always make sure in your discretionary trust is provided for. You must provide for something called excluded beneficiary. And trustee should be an excluded. So he can never use his discretionary power to exercise discretion in his own favor. That is the most important part you must bear in mind, that,
Except his fees.
He can collect his fees, yeah, exactly. But that's not discretionary. Anyway, he has all the money in his hand, he can do.
But if a trustee is also beneficiary,
then you have to provide specifically that, okay, he cannot do more than X or Y or Z or something like that, but then it is vis-a-vis other people, but this is what is a common thing I have often seen.
In more circumstances, see, it depends, right? If it's a close family and you're having, let's say, somebody in the family, let's say the father or the person who settled the trust himself act as the trustee, then for the rest of the kids. So it depends. In certain circumstances, yes, it makes sense for the trustee to also be a beneficiary and get it. But the moment, obviously, you're looking at external trustees or private trust company or institutional trustees. Because one of the objectives of ensuring that you sort of put it in trust is to ensure that the beneficiaries are not sitting there and fighting over with each other. So you just want to ensure that the objective is not lost when you're setting it up, because conflicts are always something that you want to watch out for.
And also, you can be given powers to make contributions to charity as well. Particularly in the international trust, it is common to provide charity as one of the beneficiaries, because suppose all the beneficiaries of foreign trust are Indian resident, okay, although technically tax department cannot do anything, but they can say collectively all this trust is for the benefit of Indian residents, okay, therefore we'll consider this to be Indian resident trust, okay. So if there is one of the beneficiary which is not for profit, that's normally done, Red Cross or something like that, then one can say no, still one non-resident beneficiary is there. If you're one of the non-resident beneficiaries, fine. But this is more of a tactical,
So just on the contributions to charity, right? And one of the issues that's now coming up because of this whole amendment to the tax law that they did, saying that if you're settling amounts into a trust where the beneficiaries are all close relatives, then there is an exemption that's coming in. In a normal situation, right, you would generally want to say that, okay, let me settle the trust. It's going to be for the family, but I also want to ensure that there are philanthropic or charitable purposes also which are there. There is the ambiguity that sort of arises right now is that the exception or the exemption that is there is if the beneficiaries are close relatives. But what happens if I add a charity? Does that mean that the exemption goes away or not? So that's one thing that you just need to be careful about, because there is nothing that is settled on that particular aspect. Otherwise, also consider whether to see whether things relating to charity, whether you want to put it up into a separate sub-trust or into a separate trust. Also need to be careful around anything on charity, because in some jurisdictions, and Bombay is a good example, charitable trust, you need charity commissioner for approval pretty much for everything under the sun. Last thing that you would ever want to do. So you just need to be careful when you're thinking about saying that while you do want to ensure that yes, philanthropic or charity is something that you may want to do, but you just want to be careful that does not affect the the overall the leakage or tax implications also that come through.
So is a Section 8 company better?
Okay, I have very both of us have some clear views on that. See, earlier the Section 25 company, what has happened with, again, is the whole Companies Act is in a mess. Okay. What happened, government did not appoint law commission. Ideally, they should have appointed law commission for any important law. So here, I remember having started with J.J. Irani and whole process started very well. But later on it derailed somewhere. And then the whole thing has been now done without proper people sitting for drafting or testing the constitutional validity and stuff like that. So, as you know, the 1953 Act, was replaced in 2013 by the new Companies Act of 13. But within one day they are announcing 100 amendments because government has been given power to amend the provisions of the Act in some ways. So I say it is even excessive delegation, you cannot do that. But all said and done, so they say, you go and complain of this is a problem, we'll reform. Okay, and we'll change the law. So how many amendments must have come? I don't know. I lost track of it really. So that is a major problem. Second, every civil offence is being converted into criminal offence under Companies Act. Everything is penalties and fines and imprisonment and stuff like that. Therefore, companies law has become a little unwieldy and a lot of onerous responsibilities. I'm not saying it is not good or I'm not being judgmental, but often the drafting is also very poor because all done in a little haste. I believe in 10 years time we'll have to change the company, right? Again, this might feel, at least we should start process now because it is very unwieldy. And coming back to your Section 8 thing, there are 3 ways to have a charitable or not-for-profit organization. One is a trust, the classic trust, which is in some ways very good. But when you have more unrelated people coming together to drive it, then you will need society or company. For society you need about 7 members and then all this kind of thing. Now, to set up Section 8 company itself has become now 6, 8, 10 months project. It is some or the other. Secondly, there are a lot of provisions of Companies Act that apply to you. Okay. So many times when it is like sometimes Chamber of Commerce or some of those things is still okay. But if you want to go for regular thing, I would recommend that you use trust or you use society, which is slightly less onerous in terms of, again, I'm not suggesting you compromise on governance, okay, but willy-nilly you should not fall foul of some small procedural filing here and there and stuff like that. So therefore Section 8 company becomes a little tricky.
So what is Section 25 company?
It was
under the 56 Act,
it
was Section 25, now it's Section 8.
Section 8
under the 2013 Act, because the 1956 Act, everyone talks about Section 25 company because that was under Section 25 of the 1956 Companies Act. In 2013 Companies Act, it's Section 8.
We have set up a foundation, our own foundation under Section 25 company.
So it's now a Section 8 company essentially.
Okay.
2013, yes, exactly. So it's the same thing, but I'm saying that there is some more onerous responsibility under the Companies Act. And I'm not saying, but sometimes, it goes back to what we call CMM model, okay, capability maturity model. Now, some people are able to manage a lot more complexities and you got a big legal department and can drive everything. But there are some organizations we do not have enough competency or capability. So capability is little lower. Then in that case, you might better, look at trust or society or something like that.
With one caveat.
So in family foundation, I think the trust may still work. In fact, in some of the cases, what we did, one of the problem with the trust is the trustee liability. Okay.
Unlimited
liability. It comes unless you disclose that you're acting for the trust and all this kind of thing. So one of the ways in which you can do, you can have a private trust company which can act as a trustee to your charitable trust. Yeah. And we have actually done it. It took some time for us to explain to charity commissioner that, they do not come to grips with how can you have a company, but then they ultimately bought it.
The one caveat,
But
if
then-
you're setting up a trust
But then-
for charitable purposes,
Correct.
do not try and avoid setting it up in a place which
Charity
comes with
commissioner.
charity
Charity commissioner
commissioners
exists.
exist.
Yeah,
So,
I think this
not in
knows
Bombay.
a lot about it.
Delhi, please.
Delhi, there is no charity.
Delhi, there is no charity
Not yet.
commissioner.
Not yet.
Yeah.
They won't come in. You see, it's again an outdated concept, right? To a large extent. Why, if somebody wants to do a philanthropic activity, why does that also need to be regulated by somebody? So, especially if it's a private trust. So
Here there were all those Parsi trusts, Muhammad used to
Yeah.
owning those lands.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, huge.
Half of
Yeah.
Bombay was owned by these
Yeah, absolutely.
100-year-old trusts.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly.
So you mentioned that if all the beneficiaries of a private trust are Indian resident, it's better to have somebody who is not Indian resident. I didn't
One
understand
namesake you must have.
What is the benefit? I mean,
Benefit is that one cannot say that whole trust collectively belongs to India and therefore it has resident character, So this is what I would call not a correct legal position, but tax department can allege that look here, all the beneficiaries are resident here, right? And therefore we'll bring this under the Indian tax purview.
But isn't if the trust is set up in India?
No,
Then there is no. I'm talking about non-India trusts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Especially there, it is important to have one of the non-resident beneficiaries. You may not have any name. Then most people provide one charitable thing. They say it is better to give to charity than tax department. So these are the nuances of the, this thing. Then these are the key duties that fulfill objects of the trust and obey discretion of the directions, whatever directions are given by the settler. Deal with the trust property as carefully as a man of ordinary prudence would deal. Again, this has become very interesting. Today, trustee responsibility is also pretty. New theories are coming up in England. There was one case where the trustees just kept money with zero interest and nothing. They said you are not acting as prudent. So beneficiaries said they said you are not acting as a prudent person. So whether you should take risk or not, and if you don't take risk, you are still at a risk, and if you take risk, you are anyway at risk. So there's sometimes, but I don't think so long as you behave with a common sense, I think that's a thing. But a board of trustees, individual trustees, may be not a bad idea, and take steps as would be reasonable and requisite to preserve trust property, liable to make good loss incurred by breach of fiduciary. This is what is important, that fiduciary responsibility. In fact, this issue comes up for even venture capital trust and all that, which is not relevant for the purpose. But at times, now fiduciary responsibility to the investors is becoming very, very critical. And when you look at pension plans and others who are the LPs in the company, but behind pension plan there is a small investor. So your responsibility goes all the way down to that small investor in pension plan or otherwise. So that's just a matter of side note.
So this sort of becomes relevant, especially when you're thinking about having institutional trustees, right? So in fact, so before the dispute resolution.
Sorry, just before you talk about institutional, it's important that I'm a bit confused. When we are saying that estate duty, and this happened a few years back, and everybody of us rushed to people like you and Barclays and all when they said that estate duty is coming, and then my uncle was very paranoid. He said we'll put all our assets in a trust, and then we were advised that if we put all our assets in a trust, we also have to become beneficiaries.
Yeah.
So even though I'm the settler, I'll be a beneficiary, my children will be a beneficiary, whole family will become beneficiaries, but we didn't want to give the control, so we said that we will become the trustees.
Correct.
And then
therefore
the
you are
question,
trustee and a beneficiary in some ways.
but then we were advised that it will not pass the test of law where tax people will say that you are just putting everything in a trust, you're becoming a beneficiary, and you're a trustee. So you will be having a estate duty if you
No,
one
so
of you
long
die.
as you detach yourself as a settler, the estate duty for the settler would be avoided. But if you say that I put property in a trust and I am the beneficiary and I am the trustee, where is the trust? So I am
So
a
that was
settler.
the question
I am
of
a
the
trustee.
institutional trustee.
You can be two.
Correct.
So you can be two.
So if you are two,
therefore,
there is no problem.
So if you are settler and a trustee, then you will be liable. Your estate will be liable. You follow?
But we didn't want to give up.
Your
We
beneficiary.
didn't want to appoint institutional trustees. That was the whole
But
issue.
that is fine.
So people end up doing two or three different things, right? One is the concept of the private family, the private trust company route, which means that you essentially have a company that is set up. A company acts as a trustee. It's effectively a company within your control. So effectively, let's say the settler only sets up the company, but there has to be a separate process to ensure that there is a smooth transition of the shares from a succession standpoint. So that sort of gives you the control that you want to sort of exercise in any form or manner over the trust properties, or even as far as distributions are concerned. The second thing that people end up doing is to say that, okay, even if I have an institutional trustee, I am still going to have either a concept of a protector or a concept of a advisor to the trustee, so that I can ensure that the trustee does not do anything that is untoward, and at the same time to see how much you can sort of also guide the trustee, because that's really
Like a
what
wish list, or you have a wish letter.
so that's the third thing, where you essentially have a letter of wishes, whereas a settler, you can sort of say that, okay, while it's a discretionary trust, while the trustee can technically do everything potentially that is there, but I have certain guiding principles which ideally I wish I want the trustee to follow, which can be simply put saying that even though it's a discretionary trust, you sort of say that, can you try and ensure that that any kind of distribution happens in this manner or that manner. There are two or three different things here. The letter of wishes is not a legally enforceable document. The trustee can be guided by it, but technically nobody can sue the trustee saying that, the letter of wishes said ABC, you did not do ABC, and therefore you did something that is wrong. The concept of the protector or the advisor are things which can be built into the trust deed, and are obviously the trustee is bound by those. So while you don't have a situation where the protector or the advisor is substituting himself for the trustee, but what you are effectively doing, because the trustee still is responsible, but the trustee will be guided, or let's say the protector will have certain negative rights, or the protector can actually say as to how the change in beneficiaries can happen. So that's the concept.
To a third party
can be so usually whomsoever it trusts. That's what it comes down to.
You apart from the protector, if you are the beneficiary and the settler, you can't be the protector.
The risk that you would avoid that, no?
Yeah, the risk that you run is that tomorrow, nothing stops you. The risk that you run is that tomorrow nobody should allege that the protector is essentially having so similar powers to the trustee that he should also be regarded as a trustee, and therefore
have to have a protector.
You don't have to have a protector. In fact, the concept of protector, if you see, it came about more in English law or some jurisdictions like Cayman Islands and all, where because there was pretty much a business run in terms of an institutional trustee that was there, so they actually built in all of these concepts, and you actually find it. Indian trusts, at least I have not seen a case coming out till date where anything relating to the protector has been challenged, because it's actually a relatively new concept as far as India is concerned. What you do have obviously is advisors to the trust, so that is something, those are provisions that are there, but protector is an international concept which is sort of developed over a period of time.
Main thing was that when you institute a trustee and it's a discretionary trust, how does it exercise discretion? They say you can distribute amongst any beneficiary. Where will they get guidance from?
As an unlisted company, bulk of the wealth lies in our operating business as shares.
Correct.
So if we transfer all the shares to a trust, that is desirable. Because otherwise the estate duty would be applicable, am I right?
Yeah,
in case of death. So then we have been always told that the banks create problems when they are giving credit lines. How does the business operate when the shareholders are trustees?
They're getting more comfortable now. I know earlier it used to be a problem, but now increasingly I don't see that as
if they need a PG, then who gives?
Personal guarantee, so they will expect you to give.
From the trustee or no?
No, because trustee will not give.
Now the trust owns the shares.
This whole concept of personal
Ownership
guarantee,
whole
business of personal guarantee is so entrenched in the Indian system.
India, there you can't do without.
I have seen so many people in Texas when it was going, property was high, and people bought, but no bank took personal guarantee.
Correct.
So a lot of people came back to India
How
when
do
the
you
market
operate
went
in
down,
Indian
but
context?
only it was secured against the property. In India, for everything, banks see bank always pierce the veil, corporate veil. There's any company ka guarantee, personal guarantee.
I'm not. I've given it to the. You are saying trustee is the owner.
And Vijay Mallya last exit, right?
So forget Vijay Mallya, but trustee is the owner.
That this kind of situations are very common.
Even if any kind of guarantee, so let's break this down. Even if the trustee gives a guarantee,
but why would the professional trustee give a guarantee?
No, one second. The trustee can only give a guarantee for the assets which are held, assets of the trust. Which means that let's take a situation, right? Example where closely held company settled into shares.
How will the banks, from a practical point of view, will it work?
No, but they would say, for example, banks' business is to take risk.
But they don't.
So look at
India.
So put it differently, right? Let's take
a shut down business in India. So that's a different question.
So let's take a situation where the trust has, let's say, 100 crores of investments, and it has investment.
No, but 90 crores is the shares.
90 crores is the
shares of the company.
So there are only two things which are possible, right, in this situation. First is the settler gives a guarantee, but that's of no use because the settler is essentially, doesn't have anything.
So bank won't accept it.
So bank won't accept it. It's of no use. The second is the trustee can give a guarantee qua the trust, which is essentially to the extent of the property or assets which are there in the trust. I'm willing to give a guarantee. Which means it's essentially,
I don't know, from banking perspective,
it's essentially to the extent if there's 100 crores of assets in the trust, that's the limit to which the
banks give you a bundle of forms all blank.
No, I think his question is, if the bank wants to revoke the guarantee, can they legally get that money only if it defaults on the loan?
No, this question is different. Will a bank accept?
That happens with every debtor.
No, even if the bank accept, can he
it can go against the trust property. Up to the extent of the trust property. If the trustee gives a guarantee, he can only give it in his capacity as trustee to the extent of the trust property. So the guarantee is only worth as far as the 100 crores of trust property is only to the extent of 100.
Correct. But can the bank draw that money out of the trust?
It has to enforce on the guarantee.
You don't even need it.
Enforcement is still a...
I think your question was, can the if the
big challenge,
the trustee.
So to be most banks nowadays, at least a lot of them take practice because you know what, if your total asset size is only 100 crores, you can give a guarantee even for 5,000 crores, doesn't matter. You have only 100 crores. So even when the bank says that, listen, okay, I'm going to give in a line of credit to the underlying company, I want a guarantee from the principal shareholder. The principal shareholder as the trustee can only give a guarantee for the trust assets. So whatever is the trust assets, to the extent of that he can give.
So underlying properties.
Correct.
Why should have the permission for that?
No,
absolutely.
Point is, can he enforce?
The trustees are given power to borrow and all that.
Can the bank enforce that 100 crores in case you default on the loan?
if the company defaults, na? It's an underlying default. But bank can go against the trust property.
So in practice, it
trustee,
can work.
effectively.
The company
In
can continue
practice,
to
it
do
can work.
business.
Oh yeah.
In practice, it can work.
Guys, it should not be I save estate duty, but my business shuts down.
If you look at Tata Group,
So
who
it-
owns it?
So while
Correct, Tata who owns it?
Tata is a
No,
listed company.
But I'm
no,
talking
but it's a
legalities.
different
I'm
scale.
talking
No.
about legalities. That legally, trustees can give. If bank is not
I
comfortable,
know.
then it's a different issue. But otherwise, what the problem?
So I'll give you another example.
No,
We've
when
actually
you borrow 50,000 crores, then it's the bank's headache.
Nobody
When you
wants
borrow
to-
5,000 crores, it's your headache.
See, but we have actually
That's a
seen
part. Commercial
situations.
issue.
So we've actually seen situations where that's working. We even seen situations where even when you are raising money through structured debts, situations from private equity and all, they're all comfortable saying pledge of shares. Anything that's coming in will come in only from trustee father trust. Nothing beyond
In
that.
practice, it works.
It can do.
And
Yeah,
works
it
globally?
works.
Does it work globally?
Globally, all the more.
All the more.
Because practice of giving personal guarantee when you're running a company is generally not there.
No, as you said, private equity and all that.
Yeah.
The people are comfortable dealing with trust. Everyone wants to have, obviously the comfort is that they have done the KYC to ensure that structure is fine. Who are the beneficiaries? Do I know? As long as they do the KYC, they're all comfortable actually.
I have two questions. Who can transfer property into a trust? So, for example, can only a settler transfer, or can
Only the
settlers-
owner of a property.
So-
Whosoever is the owner.
Okay,
Anybody
your
can transfer.
And he has to become the settler.
He has to be an owner. If you do not own a property, you cannot transfer.
Of course.
So owner transferring the property is called settler.
So there are two things, right? It is driven by the trust deed. Mostly and usually the standard practice is that the initial settlement is the settler does it. You have a provision for further contributions or further settlements into the trust. Can be by the named settler, or you can even get it from third parties depending on how you sort of frame your trustee. So in a lot of situations we've actually done it where the initial settlement has come in from X, subsequent contributions, for example, has come in from Y, maybe a relative, whatever, different permutations, combinations. As long as your trust deed provides for it, no problem.
As long as the trust deed
provides
for it, it's
Yes.
okay. So, and then as per this new law which you mentioned, that Y person should
has to be
relative to the beneficiaries, and then there is no tax implication.
Yes.
Okay. So it's a settler can just be a initial contributor, but then the majority contribution can come from some other relative to the beneficiaries, not who is not the settler.
Correct.
And that's okay.
You do the initial settlement at less than 50,000 because this law applies only for amounts beyond 50,000, and do the excess, the actual contributions from the relatives.
Okay. And second question, so it is the trust has beneficiaries, right? And but here we're talking about, let's say, a longer term trust. Then can the trust, or to what extent can the trust make expenses on behalf of the beneficiaries rather than actually giving money to the beneficiaries to make their own expenses? So for example, their lifestyle expenses, education.
So
are there any limits on
basically
what it can do?
When you make expenses for the beneficiary rather on behalf of it, that would be considered as kind of distribution from the
Application for the benefit of the beneficiaries. That's
There's
what you're
nothing-
applying
no-
it for the benefit of the
No,
beneficiaries.
there is not much consequence.
There is
It's
no problem
considered
to
as it is distribution of the.
I'll tell you what is
capital of
most
the-
common, right? Kids' college education.
Exactly.
That's the most common, where you're like, the trust will essentially pay the college fees. Pretty common.
But I was asking more from the US taxation angle, right? Because if you're
It's still a distribution. It's still
It is considered a distribution.
It's effectively, it's nothing but a distribution.
Okay, let's move forward a bit. Of course, I would not go too detail into the arbitration. Only point I want to make in the trust. The beneficiary and trustees cannot go in for arbitration. There is no privity of contract, and you have to go to the civil court. Other important thing is trust established by will. So you can provide for entire trust deed in a will, okay, but it comes into effect only after the demise of a person. So will always comes into force after the demise. So that is the thing. But you can also in a planning, say you may not want to give, maybe estate duty is different issue, but as a plan succession planning, if you are left with some asset and you can want to put it.
If you're 90 years old, you say transfer.
Yeah, exactly. So all those things can be done as was talked about.
It won't cover the
But they,
statutory.
huh?
If you create trust by a will, will it give an immunity from the state duty in
No.
case it comes?
No. This is part of succession planning rather than estate duty planning. Because the asset would pass anyway.
Will means estate duty. You can't avoid estate duty if there's a will.
Only thing is that for the second and third level generation, you can, for example, you can have a discretionary trust within a will. Suppose you are at a certain age, children are 50, 60, you can make them the primary beneficiary and the...
But then it's exempt if the discretionary trust is part
But after that you can avoid further, what is called succession duties. So that happens in with 10, 15 years, again another issue comes and third issue comes, So when people are at an advanced age and the children are also at advanced age, then discretionary trust works because till such time the children are at an advanced age that they are in the discretionary beneficiary. To the extent to which they need, you give them, otherwise their estate will not attract estate tax because they are part of a discretionary trust. Then cross-border elements are here, and exchange control laws are you to consider. I think I will go a little fast because but if you have a question, I'll be happy to take. So what happens is that you have overseas assets. Sometimes it is important to set up an overseas trust separate, and you appoint institutional trustee or otherwise, and because otherwise from India to transfer the names and all those kind of things will come into picture. This $250,000 scheme is sometimes used to set up a trust and stuff like that. Also, one interesting kind of an entity, you might have heard of it and you might some of you might have experienced that, is overseas. Not only the trust available, but a wide variety of trusts are available. And one of the interesting entity is called foundations in Switzerland or in Liechtenstein, right? What are these foundations? They are like trust, but they are not trust. Civil law countries do not recognize trust. Only common law countries have. Okay. So in civil law jurisdiction, there is nothing like trust. Whosoever has the title to the property is the owner, and so the trust concept is not even known to most civil law countries, right?
I have a question. In case we create a trust, and trust does the distribution.
Yeah.
That money will get distributed, goes to the beneficiaries.
Right.
That becomes a good trust.
There are two things. If it is a specific trust, and when trust earns any income or accrues any income, then it is deemed attribution to specific beneficiary. And beneficiary has to pay tax, but trustees can pay tax and get a set up. Second thing is that you can have the discretionary kind of trust, where anyway trust will pay tax. It is separately taxed, and distribution is not taxed at all.
So it goes
because it is already taxed in the hands of trustees. So second time
further, it goes to the beneficiary. Beneficiary can use it. For example, liberalized LRS.
So when we are talking about a
liberalized scheme is just to set up a trust.
So when you're talking about a foreign trust, right? And let's say a foreign discretionary trust which has made a distribution to the beneficiaries, because that's really the situation that you're dealing with.
Just take 5-7 minutes and close it.
I think so.
Is okay. Not much time.
So the import. Just answering this question. So when you're talking about a foreign discretionary trust which has made a distribution to the beneficiaries, there are two streams of thought. The first one is that if I'm able to make the allocation between capital and income, then capital distributions cannot be brought into the tax net because it's a capital asset. And it's only if there is a distribution of income which can be brought into the tax net. But then the onus obviously is on the trust to maintain separate accounts and all of that. The other one being, and I know that a lot of people actually end up saying that let me just pay tax as 30% just to avoid any headache with the tax authorities. But purely looking at it from a legal standpoint, sitting back, capital distribution, if the trust has actually made a distribution of capital,
there's no tax.
No tax.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move a little fast forward and So again, Indian settler can establish trust in India for the benefit of resident and NRI beneficiaries. Okay. Distribution to NRI beneficiaries can be made through his NRO or that account. Okay. And then he can put that money in the account and then withdraw up to $1 million abroad if he wants to repatriate. Some of you are already aware of that, And trust should not be engaged in activities prohibited by NRIs. Okay, so some real estate business and stuff like that. That's what is only, And non-resident.
In this case, the limit will not get subsumed.
This is domestic trust, you said.
Domestic trust, you do distribution.
We are not remitting.
If it's an NRI, he can take the money.
He can take money
up to
$1 million.
Up to $1 million.
Up to $1 million.
Right now.
And then a non-resident is not barred from acting as a trustee of Indian trust. Okay. Our beneficiaries may approach court seeking removal of non-resident. Sometimes,
So there is a specific provision in the Trust Act which essentially says you need to be a resident in India. So if you're not, the beneficiaries altogether can technically go in to the court to seek removal. So which is why we are usually careful about who's going to be the trustee, just so that you don't run into these kind of issues.
Yeah.
But this resident is by through definition as per the tax laws or as per the immigration?
No, it just talks about somebody who's essentially here or who's not moved out of India. So it doesn't specify, it's not linked to number of days or anything else.
I know you need to do no problem.
Sorry, the NRI beneficiary in that thing has to be related. Does he have to be related to the settler?
That is only from a tax perspective if you want to get around the 56 issue. Otherwise, there is no requirement it has to be related.
Okay. So
I thought that
but that way then anybody can take out money like that.
See, generally, because if you look at the FEMA, there are no specific provisions which actually govern this. But what RBI has generally been comfortable is to say that if you're doing a family trust, even if you have NRI beneficiaries, it's fine, but you're going to ensure that the money goes to the NRO account and the 1 million sort of applies. At least I know we have not tested or gone to RBI and had a significant discussion with them on non-relative situation, because most of them have always been relative situations in some form or manner. Because ultimately any discussion with RBI, because the law is sort of silent around it to a large extent.
And also most of them you don't settle trust for non-relative because you'll be hit with the income in his hands.
Okay.
So it doesn't make so much sense at times, but then I don't know whether I should go into the details of the US trust, because we do not have, I don't think, how much time we have.
I think we are.
Session.
Yeah, I think we can take another session or offline.
We created enough headache, and so we can. But it is important in the US context to set up certain trust, and what we have
This is
found.
called a trust. The family limited partnership is a trust.
No, limited partnership is a separate corporate entity. It is in between company and a partnership. Normally, partnership does not have a limited liability, but this partnership has a limited liability.
So it serves the purpose of estate planning without creating a trust.
To some extent, but it's still, but these are some of the things. Again, I thought that
Is this for people living in?
Depending, everybody has time for that, or again.
I think we should open for refreshments and then we can do offline. That will be
That is
better.
another thing. One small thing I was just thinking that that's fine. Yeah, I think we can do that as well. And thank you.
Thank you.
So very nice of you. Thank you. Okay. So I think people have. Okay. So these are some of the things you can also read. It's not difficult. Singapore and
Yeah.
I know.
So
I think
Nishith bhai, you should close and then call for refreshment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would like to give a vote of thanks to Nishith bhai, to Rajesh and Gauri. And the refreshments are in the adjoining room. Please do join us. and we can have offline discussions with everybody.